How many of you struggle to communicate in a way that gets people to automatically feel like, oh my gosh, this person is talking about me? How many times have you heard from people inside of your marketing, your ads, even your content? Oh my God, how are you inside my head? You're describing my life to a T. How many times have you guys created an ad or a piece of content where people are like, you spoke to my soul. I need to be on whatever it is you're doing. How many times has that happened to you? Well, if it doesn't happen every single day, then this episode is going to be incredibly powerful for you. So if you're interested on why that happens and how you can start doing that more inside of your company, content, brand, messaging, marketing, ads, emails, and everything, well, then keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're talking about a concept some of you may have never heard before. It's something that we talk heavily in or about inside of NGM, New Generation Mastery, our messaging program, and NGM Plus. And it is something that you've probably experienced, but didn't know that you were experiencing it. And this is something that we've been really playing around with a lot over the last year or so, maybe even longer. And it's the idea of diagnosing inside of your marketing and your messaging. It's basically a messaging or a communication tool, philosophy, way of thinking that I've noticed was really effective on me when people did it. And what it is it's also something that I call self-identifying language, where you're communicating or you're creating content or you're teaching and people are self-identifying with whatever you're teaching. And what that means is they're coming to their own conclusion of, this is me, this is talking about me, this is describing me, that is me, they're inside. How did you get inside my head? And what it really does is it builds huge amounts of relevancy. And that's one of the things that people don't realize, I think, when they first get into this business and you start creating content and marketing and messaging, that relevancy is one of the most important things that you can have. And when we're generalizing, we try to speak to too many people. Yes, we hear it all the time. When you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And it's like, okay, well, let's go, that's so surface level. Let's go beneath the surface here. And what they're really saying is when you speak to everyone, you become less relevant to everyone. And what that means is, like, when you're speaking, when you're able to speak to a very direct group or specific group, you're able to get more inside of their head, which triggers the self-diagnosing or the self-identifying language, which is, oh my gosh, that's me. For example, if I wanted to speak to all online business owners, I could create a title, and the title of that piece of content would be how to create engaging content. But if I make the decision, hey, I want to speak to course creators, I could say how course creators can create engaging content. But because I lasered in on course creators, I can now ask myself, well, what problems do course creators specifically have when it comes to content? And it's like, well, they're probably sick and tired of doing testimonials and they're delivering a ton of information and it not working. I was like, okay, well, e-com business owners don't likely have to do that because they're likely not doing a ton of how-to content or information-based content, right? Because they're trying to sell a physical product. So because I was able to get to the identity, I already used the identity in the title to make it more specific and more relevant to a course creator. But now I know what the problem is, what their scenario is, what their situation is. Now I can create an even more powerful title that might be something along the lines of how course creators can create really effective content without relying on tutorials. And now what's going to happen is the course creator is going through the newsfeed, the course creator is going through, whatever, Facebook, scrolling, Instagram, whatever. And they see three titles. One of them is how to create engaging content. The next one is how course creators create engaging content. And the next one is how course creators create engaging content without relying on tutorials. Which one is more relevant to their specific situation? Probably the one that was the last one that included the exact thing they're doing, their exact identity, and the exact thing they wanted. So because I was specific, I became more more relevant. And that's what diagnosing can do. Diagnosing can get people to come to the conclusion, I have that problem. So you can get people to come to their own decision. Wow, I have the problem this person solves. It also allows you to build more trust in your ability to solve their problem. And I always tell people there's 3 types of trust that we need. Everyone always says you need to know, like, and trust. And we do, but again, so surface level. Does that advice actually help anyone? Or does everyone just hear it and then repeat it all the time? Because I don't think that advice really helped me ever. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what the know, like, and trust is. There's 3 types of trust that you need to build. Number 1 is you need to build trust in your ability to solve the problem. So the prospect or the audience needs to trust your ability to solve their problem. If they do not trust your ability to solve the problem, they will not buy from you. So that's why things like over teaching or overcomplicating or overwhelming people doesn't help. In fact, it pushes sales away because it totally destroys the trust in your ability to help them, and also destroys their trust in their own ability to follow your process or to solve the problem on their own. So when we overteach, we overwhelm people, we destroy the second type of trust we need, which is they need to trust their own ability to solve the problem, follow the process. Okay, so they need to trust your ability, and they also need to trust their ability. And then they do need to trust you just as a human to human. So that's more of the know, like, and trust, right? So they need to trust you, and things like revealing your values and your demonstration of understanding where they're at and why the problem occurs and all that stuff will help with that. So what I'm going to teach you is how to get that self-identifying language or diagnose people. And when we do this, we actually can gain 2 or 3 of the types of trust that we need. And so what I want to do is just give you an example. And if you've been in our ecosystem for any amount of time, you've likely heard this analogy before or heard me go into it. But I like to use this analogy of a doctor. Okay. So I want you to imagine that you are, sick with stomach pain, and it's been going on for 2 weeks, and it starts at 7:30 at night and it ends at 8:30 at night. You have no idea why it's there, where it came from, what it is. You go to 9 doctors, and 9 doctors go I have no idea what's wrong with you. What are you going to feel? Probably going to feel depressed, sad, hopeless, like there's no end in sight, right? There's an issue going on. No one knows what it is. Not going to feel great. That's for sure. So I want you to imagine the feeling that you have, because that's the same feeling that your prospects and your audience probably have. They have a problem. No one tells them why the problem is, what the problem is, why it's occurring, what's going on. They're totally clueless. No one's been able to help them. So I want you to imagine for a second, you go into a 10th doctor, and the 10th doctor doesn't even say anything. You don't even say anything to the 10th doctor, but they take one look at you. And I want you to imagine they take one look at you and they say, hey, let me guess. You had stomach pain that probably started about 2 weeks ago and starts at 7:30 at night and ends at 8:30 at night. What are you going to feel? You're probably going to feel relieved. Like, oh my God, doctor, how did you know that? How did you know? Oh my gosh, doctor, what's the solution? What's the treatment? How do we fix this? Now, I want you to imagine that doctor walks away and goes, oh yeah, you got stomach flu, and walks away. You're literally going to chase them down and go doctor, you never told me the treatment. You never told me the solution. What's the solution? What's the treatment? There you are, chasing the doctor down, asking them for the solution, begging them to work with you. And that doctor never said they had a solution. They never told you what the solution was. They never showed you their case studies. They never showed you their degrees or their certifications or their testimonials. The doctor never did any of the things that you think that you need for sales. Yet there you are, chasing them down, asking, begging them to help you, to work with you. That is the power of diagnosing inside of your content. No one has been able to do that for your audience. And what happens is when the doctor got so specific on here's what you're dealing with, and here's the unwanted situations you're dealing with, here's the problems you're going through, here's the symptoms, and just nailed it, you came to your own conclusion. This person knows their stuff. They have the solution, because there's no way that they just automatically knew what is going on if they haven't had experience in this. And so that's what's really going on, is you become hyper relevant to that person, but also the trust in your ability to solve the problem goes through the roof, because you're so specific and so spot on. The only way that would have happened is because you've had experience fixing this issue, or you understand this issue better than everyone else. And this is why I like content and ads. That's kind of like, we call it 5 signs. It's like, we did a post as an ad. It was actually an ad. It was one of our best converting ads. It was 5 signs your messaging is off as a course creator. And then I just went through 5 specific scenarios that are going to happen when your messaging is off. So you're going to experience this and this and this and this. And so what happens is, as a course creator reads that and they start seeing, oh my gosh, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, I'm experiencing this, they come to their own conclusion. Oh my gosh, I have a messaging problem. So I'm getting them to self-diagnose themselves or self-identify with the language I'm using. I become hyper relevant to their situation because they're like, oh my gosh, that's me. And this is really, really powerful. Another person that I love to follow who is a master of this is the holistic psychologist on Instagram. Most of her content is self-diagnosing content. It's where she says, hey, if you had this type of parent and you have this sort of relationship, you're suffering from childhood trauma. And she goes very specifically into, here's the type of parent, and this type of parent usually means you're going to have this sort of pattern in a relationship. And when you go, oh my gosh, I had that parent and I have that problem, oh my gosh, I must have childhood trauma. So she gets you to come to your own conclusion. You have a problem. You have the problem that she solves. This is how people can start to create a lot of demand inside your content. And so one of the easiest ways to do it is to get very clear on the problems that are actually going on. And I'm not talking about generalized problems. I'm talking about like specific problems. And the way I like to describe problems is, what is the unwanted situation? What is the unwanted, actual real life experience that people are going through? And so when I say something like, people are like, well, Brandon, here's a very specific problem. You have to go to work every day in a very toxic environment. I'm like, nope. Because if the person doesn't identify in their head that it's a toxic environment, even if it is, it doesn't work. So what I say to that person is, what is toxic? Describe toxic work environment to me. And they might say something like, well, every time you get an idea, it gets shot down. And your boss just tells you to be quiet and get the work done. I'm like, great, that's what you say. So you're going to say, instead of saying every day you go to a work environment, it would say every day you work in a place that never listens to your idea, just tells you to put your head down and get your work done every single day. And it makes you feel undervalued. And people will look at that and go like, oh, that's me. And that's exactly what I'm dealing with. That's exactly what I'm going through. So that would be a very relevant piece of copy or a problem. And so you could even say, do a piece of content that's like 5 signs you're working in a toxic environment. And you can come up with these situations. And that's a very great self-identifying, self-diagnosing piece of content, because people can read it and go like, oh my gosh, I'm working in a toxic work environment. And this content is very powerful. And it's very powerful because you're raising people's awareness. You're making people aware of problems that they didn't know they had, or you're going to be validating something that they already knew. Like, oh my gosh, he's right. I guess I do work in a toxic environment. So maybe they already had a thought, maybe they already had a worry or concern. Now you're validating them. So either way, you're making someone feel heard and understood, or you're making them aware of things that they weren't aware of before. And I love doing this even inside of webinars. So we use this inside of webinars, ads, emails, sales mechanisms, which a webinar would be, content. But I love doing it inside of webinars or sales mechanisms, because what I like to do is right in the beginning is build that rapport and get people to sink their teeth into my presentation. Diagnosing them in the beginning makes your presentation hyper relevant to them. But I always like to say, like, here's the problems you guys are likely dealing with. And people are like, oh my gosh, yes, that's me. And I say, look, we're going to get into the teaching now. Here's the 5 reasons why that's happening. And then I'm going to show you how to fix it. And then I go through, here's the mistake you're making that's causing the problem, or here's what you're doing to try to fix it. And here's why it doesn't work. And I start going through the actual real specific scenarios that they're doing. And so what it does is people are now going like, oh my gosh, I have that problem. And holy crap, I'm making that mistake. It builds this subconscious rapport where they're like, this person just freaking gets it. And you now have their attention to a level you've never had before. And that's really powerful, because when you have that sort of attention and then move into the teachings, the attention level that person has and the level of trust they have is higher than anything you've ever seen before. And this is what we work with our NGM Plus students. We work through a lot of this. Like a lot of the work we do is figuring this out and then plugging it into their webinars and their ads. And it just works like something we've never seen before. So the areas, again, we use this is you guys can use this sort of content or language inside of content. You can use it inside of emails. You can use it in ads. You can use it in sales mechanisms. But really what it comes down to is understanding the actual problems and mistakes of the brand or the funnel, using them and saying, here's what, if you're on this webinar, you're probably this type of person. You can use it in content, like 5 signs that you're dealing with this problem. You could say, hey, if you're this type of person who's dealing with this very specific problem, and use a carousel thing and swipe, like, here's 5 reasons why that's happening. Like that type of content does really, really well and is extremely value adding. But what I'm really showing you guys how to do is build trust in your ability to solve the problem. You're going to make someone feel heard and validated. You're going to be hyper relevant to them. You're going to build that trust that you need. And you're adding value in a way without delivering a tutorial on how to actually do something. So when you guys look at people's content, like the holistic psychologist, you'll notice she doesn't really give tutorials out. It's mostly this self-diagnosing sort of content. And I don't think you should be doing it all the time. You need to still use educational, and you do need tutorials, and you still need connection content. You still need thought reversals. But if you're not using diagnosing in your marketing, you're missing out on a lot. And a lot of the problems that you're probably going to start facing is that people don't stick all the way through your webinars. They're not converting. They don't feel like you're relevant to them. They're probably not paying attention to the content you're doing or the titles that you're coming up with. They're not reading your emails or following the call to actions. So even inside of emails, I love using this. So I'll say things like, hey, if you're a course creator who's suffering with this problem, this may be one of the most powerful emails you have ever written. The way this problem shows up is this way, this way, this way. And what most people do to try to fix it, they try this, this, and this, and this. If you are experiencing that problem and you're trying to fix it using one of those things, I know exactly why it's not working. And I put together an entire webinar to break down why it's not working and what to do to fix it. So click here and register. And those emails work so well. So this, my friends, is the art of diagnosing inside of your marketing and your messaging. I wanted to introduce you to the concept. Let me know how you like it, because if you do like it, we can drop down into some more frameworks and stuff like that inside the podcast at a later time. But I want you to start thinking through, what are the problems that I solve? What are the mistakes that are causing it? What are the mistakes people try to do to fix it? How do I put this in content? How do I get specific on it? How do I get so specific that people automatically feel like this is me, they're talking about me? And just so you guys know, getting specific doesn't mean narrowing down who you speak to necessarily. For example, if I said, how many of you guys have gone to the grocery store and you go to the produce section and you grab those like clear or green plastic bags that they like to give you that are super thin, and you have to like lick your fingers to even just open up the bag. And then when you throw like things in there, like potatoes or whatever, like especially sweet potatoes, the bags rip and it's just a big, huge hassle. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? Probably most of you. But again, that's a very specific scenario, but it's also relevant to a wider range of people because most people know exactly what I'm talking about. So getting specific doesn't mean talking to a smaller group. It just, you have to look at what are the specific problems that people are going through. How do I talk about them specifically? But I have to pick problems that the majority of my audience is actually dealing with. And then when you get specific on it, it doesn't mean that you're narrowing it. It just means that they automatically have the conclusion that, oh my gosh, this is me and this is relevant to me. So hopefully that helps. So if you guys love this episode, let me know. Leave me a review on iTunes. I love reading those reviews. I can't wait to read the ones you guys are going to leave me after this episode. So if you enjoyed this episode, go do that now. And I will see you all next week for another episode. Take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.